Hello, welcome to this next Flip Preaching video. My name's Andy. This week we're looking at a brilliant passage. I've heard it said it's many people's favourite passage from the Bible. In fact, it's John 4, 5 to 42, the story of the woman at the well. Last week we looked at an encounter between Jesus and Nicodemus in John 3, which comes just before this. And in many ways, this is kind of the opposite. It's a woman, not a man. She has her encounter with Jesus at midday, where Nicodemus came at nighttime. Nicodemus doesn't get it. She does, very much so. I want to pick out just a few things from this. I'd like to start by thinking about this idea of living water. The woman meets Jesus at a well, and there are at least 3 examples of encounters between men and women at wells in the Old Testament. It's a bit of a, what's the word, not a stereotype, but it's a kind of literary thing that people would have said, oh yeah, it's a woman and a man meeting at a well, and often it ended in marriage, but not in this case. So Jesus meets this woman at the well, and he says that unlike this well, which just gives regular water, he can provide living water. And there are some really interesting Old Testament uses of the idea of God being a fountain of living water, which probably John wanted everybody to think of and to come back to. I want to think first about Jeremiah 2:13, where God is criticizing the people through the prophet Jeremiah for rather than trusting him, the fountain of living water, for digging their own cisterns. A cistern, we tend to think of that as being the thing above a toilet these days, but it's a container for water. And people, or societies back then, used to dig big tanks underground and line them with clay so that the water would collect in them, but they tended to be a bit leaky. And God says that you have built a leaky cistern rather than trusting in me. People have this tendency to try and do it themselves, to make a way for spiritual fulfillment outside of God. And God said it's like a leaky cistern. It doesn't work. It's stagnant water, not living water, and it leaks. It doesn't do the job. We've thought in the last few weeks about some of the things that we do which try and replace God in our lives. The idols which we think will fulfill us but never do. Things like perhaps social media. We tend to think that going onto Facebook will make us feel satisfied. It's like a leaky cistern. But there are also promises that God will pour out living water, his living water, onto the whole world. In Zechariah, let me get the number right, Zechariah 14:8, it talks about water which flows out from the east to the west, covering the whole world. In Ezekiel 47 verse 9, it talks about a river of living water which brings life to everything it touches, that gets bigger and bigger and bigger the further it flows away from the temple. And that's what God promises, that God will restore and bring life and freshness and healing, life in all its fullness. Now, when will this happen? In verse 23 of this, Jesus says something which is a bit of a conundrum. He says, the time is coming and the time is now when the people will worship in truth. The time is coming and the time is now. And it's a bit of a mystery because it can't be both things at once. And I wonder if it's something like a concertina. So if this is now, and this is the eternal future, the glorious resurrection future that will be ours, the promise that God will pour his life and love across the whole world and bring everything back to life. So this is now and this is then. And Jesus is saying that the time is coming, but also the time is now. Jesus kind of collapses the future and the present into one moment. It's like saying that in Jesus, what happens in the future, what will be the glorious future, actually is with us now. We can get a foretaste of the eternal blessing of God right now. We just have to be open to it, I guess. The passage talks in verse 24. It says that God is spirit. 3 times John in his writings says God is something. He says God is love, God is light, and God is spirit. Now that's a way, I think, of saying that God is like the air, like the wind. Everywhere we go, we find God's presence. Part of the argument between Jesus and this woman at the well, before she clicks, is that she thought that you had to worship God in a particular place. For her, as a Samaritan woman, it was on the mountain where she meets Jesus. And she thought, the Jews thought, that it was in the temple in Jerusalem. But Jesus is saying the time will come, and the time is now, when you worship God in spirit. It doesn't matter where you do it, because God is everywhere. Sometimes we tend to think that some places are more sacred than others. Perhaps the church that you go to, if you go to a church, you kind of think that building has got a sacred holiness because of the history or the, what's gone on in the past. But I think the truth is that God is everywhere, and all places are sacred and holy. And as we get the promise here that the living water will flow out across the whole of the world, both now and in the future, we've got this beautiful understanding that God is spirit and God is everywhere. You can worship God and connect with God everywhere, at all times, wherever you are. Nothing is profane. It's all good. It's all sacred. Now there's loads more in this passage, but they were the things that were particularly on my mind as I prepared this. But I wonder what strikes you. I mean, there's loads of other things. Just very quickly, Jesus is a radical boundary crosser in this. He speaks to a woman, which was something you didn't do back in those days, particularly ones at wells. Remember, there was that kind of romantic connotation about meeting a woman at a well. Jesus overcomes that. He overcomes the barriers between men and women, and he elevates this woman to a central place. There's an ethnic barrier as well, in that the Jewish people, like Jesus was, didn't have anything to do with the Samaritans. But there's also a barrier of morality. This woman was, she had a bad reputation because of her many marriages and her potential infidelities in the past. But Jesus doesn't care. He still meets her, and she's the one who is the first great spreader of the good news. Thank you for watching. I hope that's been useful. So may you know that God is everywhere, and may the eternal future be yours today. Amen. Bye-bye.